These are the sorts of things. These are the massive changes in sort of the economics of the world that will bring crypto, the only free market left in the world, and to an extent gold, to levels that fiat price levels that we would not find, that are unimaginable. And so that's why I think that's how we get to $1 million Bitcoin. It's 250,000 is a stop on the way.
Bitcoin is set to explode to $1 million as countries initiate massive money printing. That's the latest prediction from Arthur Hayes, former BitMex CEO. The global financial system is changing fast, and Bitcoin stands to be the biggest winner. As governments worldwide ramp up money printing to prop up their economies, traditional assets are losing their appeal. Crypto, the only truly free market left, is becoming the ultimate hedge against currency devaluation. With the US pushing for a weaker dollar, China looking to revive its economy, and Europe trying to fund massive projects, the flood of liquidity could send Bitcoin to levels once thought impossible. Arthur Hayes sees $250,000 as just a checkpoint, with $1 million as his bull case. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video, as Arthur Hayes reveals exciting outlooks about the Bitcoin market. Also guys, only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you enjoy staying up to date with finance content, consider subscribing or liking the video. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Now let's go back to the video and hear from Arthur Hayes.
So I released an essay about 2 days ago, and then, if you want to read a 5,000 page description of what I'm going to describe in 15 minutes, go right ahead. It's a little bit more detailed. But essentially, my premise is that post the Trump election in the United States, Bitcoin has traded ahead of the fundamentals in terms of global liquidity. So gets elected, he has this whole platform of how he's going to, make America great again, print a bunch of money, get companies to invest in American productive capacity, do lots of things in the crypto space, tax space, everything. It's going to be amazing in Trump world. And everybody else around the world, to compete with America, is going to have to print money as well to help their own domestic industries, like in China and all those other countries. And unfortunately, it seems like the liquidity situation is disappointing. So moving over to the US, obviously the 10-year treasury has, been on a tear, price down, yield up since the Fed started cutting rates in September of last year. And if you'll remember, it was quite interesting that the Fed started cutting rates right in the fall, right before an election cycle, probably to help Harris win. Obviously, she didn't. As soon as Trump gets elected, Powell's like, oh, I'm not resigning. There's been various former Fed governors, William Dudley to be specific, who wrote a very provocative op-ed in Bloomberg a few years ago saying how the Fed should actively use its power of influencing quantity of money and price to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get elected. And he was the president of the New York Fed, the most powerful Fed governor bar the chairperson for many years. So he definitely still has an influence. And at a recent press conference in November, right after the Trump election, Powell was asked, has anything changed because of the election? And he stated that, we're looking at some new super secret economic variables that might influence the trajectory of our path, which is code words for saying, maybe we slow down, maybe we start raising rates because of the election. So I think as much as Powell tries to play the I'm not a political person game, he's very political. Him and Trump don't like each other. Trump obviously is lambasting him over Bloomberg and, the newswire saying, cut the money. I need, cheap money and lots of money to revitalize American industry. And Powell is saying, oh no, I'm here to fight inflation. So obviously inflation is still above their target. So if they were going strictly by their own self-imposed measures, they shouldn't be cutting rates at all and raising them. On the other hand, you have a federal deficit that's exploding higher. And I know people like to cite the Department of Government Efficiency, the meme department. That isn't a department at all. It's literally just an advisory position that Trump created for his boy, Elon. An actual department requires U.S. congressional approval, and that hasn't happened yet. I have to say it won't, but DOGE is literally just an advisory body. It has no power. Yes, Elon can memify, profligate government spending as much as he wants, but that's not new news. I don't think politicians particularly care. And if you're going to get reelected in 2026, are you going to go against your seniors and the defense industry and cut their spending, which is the major, 70% of government spending in the US is healthcare and defense. Those aren't getting cut, in my opinion. So, the deficit isn't going anywhere. You have an antagonistic Fed. You have a treasury maturity profile that's completely fucked up because the US has to roll over something like $6 trillion of short-term debt at higher rates this year because Yellen wanted to juice the markets for Biden and Harris during their term. And so you have all this coming together, and you have a debt ceiling issue where, whether it's today or tomorrow, I don't know when the day is, the US government cannot net issue any new debt to fund the government. And so Trump has a choice, I believe. He can either have a crisis happen today or, in the near future, 3 to 6 months, in terms of, an antagonistic Fed, a treasury maturity profile that is not commensurate with affordability for the government and its programs, and the inability of the banking system to buy more of this debt. And the trigger for sort of, a little mini financial crisis could be, okay, I'm going to tell Bessent, the new U.S. Treasury Secretary, that he should not run down the checking account of the government to help forestall the government shutdown. Let's have this debt ceiling fight today. Every time there's a debt ceiling fight, everyone gets all up in arms. People get afraid that the U.S. government's not going to, pay out on its bonds, which is ridiculous. Of course, they're going to raise it. It's just a political game, and it depends on which particular congressperson or senator gets their piece of pork for their district. And so once they work all that stuff out, it'll get raised. The question is, what happens in the interim? Do we get sort of a liquidity flush out, get the Fed seeing religion again? You need to print money. You need to allow the banks to put as many treasuries on their balance sheet as possible to help Trump and Bessent enact their campaign promises. Stop being an asshole. The financial system, Pax Americana, the empire was going to crumble unless you give us the free money. So that's sort of my premise on the American side of things, of why I think it's politically expedient for Trump to have the bad thing happen right now when he can blame it on Biden and Harris.
Meanwhile, Bitcoin's hash rate has hit a new all-time high, reaching 833 exahashes per second, a 9% increase in just a few days, according to Glassnode. This surge highlights the network's growing security and resilience, even as mining profitability remains flat due to historically low transaction fees. The hash rate spike follows major institutional investment in mining infrastructure ahead of Bitcoin's April 2024 halving. Since then, hashrate has jumped over 40%, signaling that miners remain committed despite rising operational costs. While pre-orders for mining hardware have started to slow, the network's strength continues to climb. With a 6% difficulty adjustment expected in the coming days, miners will face more pressure. But this also reinforces Bitcoin's long-term security and decentralization. As adoption grows and institutional capital continues flowing in, Bitcoin is proving once again that it is the most secure and unstoppable financial network in the world. Now let's go back to more exciting outlooks by Arthur Hayes.
While the Ethereum ETF launch has been great, it hasn't nearly been as much of a knockout success as Bitcoin, and obviously the marginal popularity will decline as we go down the stack in terms of the market cap rankings. I think at the end of the day, what pushes people to reallocate is money printing, right? If my government bond portfolio is underperforming, if the economy is rocking and rolling and I'm only getting 3 or 4% on my bonds or in my bank account, then the crypto ETFs look like a good deal. But if that liquidity isn't there, then I'm going to stick with what I know, because I talk with lots of high net worth money managers. I'm like, oh, are your clients asking for any of this stuff? And yeah, while in our echo chamber, we think that this is really important, no rich people are asking for crypto in a big way, right? So it's still not a thing. And so, yes, Bitcoin is a thing. Everyone knows what Bitcoin is, but the Solana ETF is not going to be as successful as the Ethereum one, as the Ripple one, as the Cardano one, or whatever down the line, unless you sort of get a mental shift. And that takes time, because at the end of the day, all these wealth advisors basically plug in a bunch of numbers into a computer. It tells them the historical returns, and they say, look, it did well in the past, it'll do well in the future. Don't fire me if it goes down in price. And so once you get enough history, then they can sort of, reduce their career risk by putting people into these crypto products. And that takes time. And so I think crypto people are a bit impatient in terms of how long it's going to take for these really to impact the market. But if you think about it, like the passive investing movement is at its zenith right now, but this, ETFs were launched in the early 90s, right? And it's only now, 30 years later, that we're really seeing the real effects of this set it and forget it type of passive investing. And so I think we're gonna need some time for the salespeople around the world to start getting these things embedded into pension plans, all these sorts of like defined contribution things, all these set it and forget it type of investing programs. It takes time. So I don't think that if one of these launches tomorrow, it's going to have a massive impact on the price of crypto.
The Bitcoin ETFs aren't even there yet, right? I mean, if you look, you talk to financial advisors, you talk to the issuers, they say it's a fraction of people that even have access to them, right? Because, most wirehouses haven't approved them. Vanguard's never approving them, apparently, and a lot of RIAs haven't done the due diligence. So if we can't even get the Bitcoin ETFs, passive into those passive allocations, good luck Doge ETF. So we talked about the dip to 75 and the prediction of 250, but we didn't talk about what sends us to 250, unless it's simply just a whole lot of liquidity. But that's still a much bigger number than 75. I mean, that's, over a 2.5x up from those lows. So do you think that there's something unique to the Bitcoin news cycle or market that sends it to those highs? Is it just the cycle, or is it just high beta to everything else rising?
Well, I think if you listen to what Trump and Besson and all of his lieutenants want to do, they want to rearrange the world around the U.S. Take them at their word, whatever. But that requires a lot of money printing. It requires destroying the real value of government bonds in the United States. It's the only way they can do what they want to do. It requires massive amounts of bank credit creation to hand to companies to build things in America because they can't afford to do it because China's just so much better at it, right? So it requires trillions of dollars of money. It can only come via printing it. And they're going to use the ability to have the world's reserve currency to essentially reflate America. That's in America. In China, they need to do almost the same thing, a little bit different, right? They need to pump up their property market, get the plebs investing in stocks again, get them confident again, get inflation up. They need to print yuan as well. Japan needs to sell a bunch of shit and repatriate yen, and the US doesn't want them to sell the stuff. So the US is going to give them the money so they don't sell anything, right? Europe wants to decarbonize, but then shut off all their energy from Russia and shut off products from China and continue having the biggest welfare state in the world. So they need to print money as well. So everybody needs to do the same things to fulfill their goals. And I think the catalyst for getting into gear is, Trump and Besson have been very clear. We're going to weaken the dollar. We're going to increase credit creation, and that's going to create growth. We'll see if that actually happens or not. But at the end of the day, they're going to try, and they've been very consistent in that message. And if you listen to some of the macro analysts, I read, Zolt and Pazer and some other guys who a lot of these people listen to, what are the things they're talking about? Devaluing the dollar versus gold, telling friendly countries, hey, you have all these treasuries that mature in 10 years. Well, we're going to stuff you with a 100-year treasury. You can't sell it. I'll give you dollars for it if you need them. But if you want U.S. markets and U.S. security umbrella, you're going to take your treasuries and turn them into 100-year bonds, which is a massive devaluation. Or you're going to give us your gold and we're going to give you this piece of paper. And if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. That's what they're telling people. And so it's going to happen. And these are the sorts of things. These are the massive changes in sort of the economics of the world that will bring crypto, the only free market left in the world, and to an extent gold, to levels fiat price levels that we would not find, that are unimaginable. And so that's why I think that's how we get to $1 million Bitcoin. It's 250,000 is a stop on the way.
Institutional money is flowing into crypto like never before, and global governments are gearing up for massive stimulus efforts. With Trump back in office, his administration has made it clear that they intend to weaken the dollar and increase credit creation, policies that historically have fueled explosive Bitcoin rallies. At the same time, major economies like China, Japan, and the EU all need to print more money to stimulate their own markets, further debasing fiat currencies. According to Arthur Hayes, this worldwide shift towards aggressive monetary expansion is creating the perfect storm for Bitcoin's next leg up. Anyway, guys, before we go, if you want to stay most up to date on the crypto and Bitcoin world, make sure to subscribe to my daily 5-minute crypto newsletter. It's a concise resource for the latest expert predictions, breaking news, and top on-chain analysis, trusted by over 50,000 subscribers for insightful crypto investment information. Don't miss out on the opportunity to stay informed in the crypto market. The link is in the description below. I hope you all enjoyed today's video and that it provided you with some value. I'll see you all in the next one, and as always, all the best.